Hi everybody, Jay the Fish Guy here. Today's going to be our first official product unboxing and review. So if you guys have ever looked into canister filters, I'm sure you've seen the Sun or the Aquatop, really inexpensive canister filters. And I've always seen them. I've never had a chance to really play with one. And I have a new build coming up that I figured, well, you know what, why not? I was on one of my wholesalers, I was doing an order anyway, and I saw that Aquatop was listed under some of the brands that they had, so I was checking them out. This is their newest line. It's called the Forza. This is the smallest one that they seem to offer. This is the FZ7, rated for 295 gallons per hour. They say it's good for between a 60 and a 90 gallon tank. And the thing that always struck me as kind of unique is that they have a built-in UV sterilizer to the filter itself. All one plug, all built in. That could potentially be a problem. Anytime you're dealing with the cheaper companies, especially the really cheap stuff like Sun, they're almost considered disposable. So I'm curious how this is kind of at the higher end of the quote-unquote cheap filters. It does say that it has a 1-year warranty. I'll be looking into the package there to see what that really means. But if there's some warranty support, or if at the very least, if I could go back to my wholesaler and say, hey, it crapped out, what can you do for me? That makes me feel a little bit better than the Sun ones, where you're basically just, you have no recourse. If it craps out, good luck getting service. So this particular sized one, I see them retailing for anywhere between $120 and $150, depending on what online vendor you go to, and I'd be able to sell it right around there as well. So it's definitely a budget-minded canister. Let's start opening things up and seeing what the quality looks like, and go from there. So here we have the top of the filter. We've got a on-off switch for the UV sterilizer on the very top, so you can manually turn it on and off. This is a plastic splash guard to keep water off the switch. I would have liked to see that be a rubber, I don't know if they call it a grommet or what, but I've seen switch covers like this before, where it's kind of built in with an O-ring, and you can just kind of push through the cover so that moisture and water can't get in there. There's no real sealing factor to this. It's, again, more of just a splash guard as opposed to a waterproofing element. So small gripe, but just to point out, don't dunk the top of this with water. This is their revolutionary single pump easy primer. They're saying that you should be able to just literally lift this up, a little hard to do one-handed, and push down, and your filter is primed and ready to go. We'll see if that is the case or not when it comes time to actually set it up. I definitely like the heavy-duty handle. Makes taking the filter in and out and taking it to service it a little more friendly. This is kind of the standard of the industry now on a lot of canisters, is this piece here is removable. So you'll have your filter tubes going to the tank. This is pushed down and locked into place with the lever, and this is the so-called on position. When you go to service it, you unplug the filter, you'll release this handle here, and you can disconnect the canister from the tubing in one action, and literally walk away with the canister filter, take it to the sink, take it wherever, service the filter, and bring it back, and just reverse the process. And no need to reprime. You literally just kind of open the valve, and since the tubes are already filled with water, it kind of just swoops through, pushes the air out. And with most canisters, you don't need to reprime, but we'll see again what this particular filter is like. Alright, so until I get my tripod set up, I figured I'd skip past the shaky, one-handed box opening routine that I've seen on far too many unboxing videos that tends to give me motion sickness. So hopefully you guys appreciate that, and until I get a tripod, we'll just skip past that part. So here we have it out of the box, and just for a size reference, we have it next to a Coke can here. I mean, I could put my hand on it to give you a rough idea, but you don't know how big my hand is. So there's the Coke can for reference. It looks to be roughly the size of, you know, a Fluval 406, maybe a 306. The gallons per hour rating is right up there, even though this is their smaller sized out of the three that they offer with the built-in UV. It's still a good sized filter. Hopefully that flow rating is remotely accurate. I've seen far too many times that some companies will rate their filters or power heads way high, and then you put it on the tank and it's just nowhere near where it should be. So filter comes, I'm assuming, with all the media inside of it already, and you have a box that comes with all the intake parts and pieces as well, 2 lengths of tubing, and your instructions. So the interesting thing about the plumbing is that it showed on the box that it has a wide variety of options. Let's bring that over here. So your intake, you have the ability to use a surface skimmer attachment, which I thought was kind of cool. You can use a spray bar, which would be this long piece here, or you could just simply use a nozzle. So depending on how you wanted your flow, you can kind of change things up, and it's all included instead of having to buy additional parts and pieces. So that's kind of cool. All right, so here we have all of the intake and output pieces kind of spread out where you can see. One of the cool things is you can see these color-coded end caps here. They correspond to the end caps on the filter itself. So you can actually match up the appropriate. Blue goes for output, red goes for input, so you're not crossing the lines accidentally. Not that it's that huge of a deal, but it's one little touch that's actually kind of nice. It makes it a little more friendly setting up. As you can see, the spray bar is actually quite large. I held it up to my 120, and this is actually 2 feet long. It separates out in the middle, so if you didn't want to use the full 2 feet and just wanted to use a 12-inch section, you could as well. So this piece here just connects right to that instead of the nozzle, so that you have the option of using either or the entire spray bar, or just simply half the spray bar. Alright, so here we have the canister filter all open and apart. And you can see it's a pretty simple, straightforward design, like a lot of them. You have various media baskets. This is how it came out of the canister. I'm not necessarily going to put it back in this particular order, but the very first one had plastic bio balls, or their version of. You can see these guys here, along with a coarse blue pad at the bottom of that basket. The next basket had the classic ceramic noodle biomedia, also with a fine pad at the bottom. The blue's the coarse, the white's the fine. And then in this basket, they did something a little different. They have, it's basically like a cartridge for a cartridge filter. You can see there's a small amount of carbon inside here, not very much. Definitely I would be running a lot more if it was me. And then this top is kind of a fine, even finer polishing pad almost. And then there's the fine white pad at the bottom of that basket as well. I'm probably not going to end up using this cartridge. I have no interest in buying replacement cartridges. I mean, that kind of defeats the purpose of a canister filter. That's why a lot of us get away from hang on the backs is, you know, price of admission on a hang on the back is cheap, but they get you in the tail end with all the replacement cartridges over the years. So the nice thing about a canister is being able to fill up these baskets with whatever media that you want. So the very bottom basket, I may keep the bio balls as kind of a pre-filter media. It depends on what I end up doing with this particular tank for fish for the client. Sometimes I'll use just a filter floss as a fine polishing media before I get to the chemical and the biological stages. I'll get out as much organics and heavy particulates as possible. Then it goes into what I usually use as chemical filtration in the middle basket, or baskets, depending on the filter. So I'll use bags of carbon in this basket. And then the final basket, usually I'll use a biomedia. I'm not quite sure. I got to open up the bag and take a look at how porous those ceramic noodles are. A lot of times I'll use the Sarah Siperax, which is a sintered glass. It's a lot more porous, a lot more surface area. Though I did just get in a bucket of the Seachem Pond Matrix. I've been hearing a lot of people say good things about this matrix, that I might try that in the top chamber for biomedia on this particular setup. So I'm not quite sure yet. We'll see what happens. Overall, it looks pretty decent as far as build quality. You know, everything seems pretty solid, pretty sturdy. It doesn't feel like super cheap plastic. Like, these baskets have, you know, a little give to them, but not too bad, not nearly as bad as I was expecting for the price point. So that's good. This weird little nozzle here, this is where the UV is housed. So the water comes in through the pump head, goes down past the UV, comes out the bottom here through this flared nozzle, and that's all the way at the bottom. So it'll come out underneath this last basket and then work its way up through the 3 baskets and then go out back up to the main tank. All right, initial thoughts and opinions after having it out of the box and playing with all the parts and pieces. The good. It's inexpensive. For what it is, you know, a canister filter, 295 gallons per hour, built-in UV sterilizer. For the money, you get a lot of filter. You know, it's 120 to 150 bucks depending on where you get it from. And that's not a whole lot of money for this level of filter. You know, long-term it remains to be seen how noisy it is, the durability of parts, you know, taking it apart, you know, again and again when you have to service it, you know, if the clamps break, if little plastic pieces break. Again, like I said before, they look pretty well built. It doesn't feel like cheap plastic. So that's another good feature, is that, you know, it doesn't feel like a cheap filter. The bad. I'm not terribly pleased with their version of a cartridge filter for the carbon and the polishing pad. I know that's a small gripe, but it seems like an afterthought and tacked on. I understand why they did it. They want you to get, you know, to buy their replacement cartridges so they can make a little more money on the tail end. But, you know, like I said, I'm not going to be using it. The pads, I may end up buying the pads or trying to find them in bulk because they're already pre-cut and fit and the correct size. I'd rather just go ahead and buy those if I could. I could probably cut out some bulk bonded filter pad or something, but I'm sure they're not terribly expensive. And the nice thing about those is you can rinse and reuse them. They're coarse enough that, you know, if you buy a set of 3 blue pads and 6 of the white ones, since they use 2 of the white ones in here, that'll probably last you, you know, a good solid year or more with rinsing and reusing and rotating. So that's another good feature of this filter. So I'll make another video in either a few weeks or a month after I have it on the tank and up and running and have had a chance to play with it and see what it's like in the real world, so to speak, on a tank. But initially, I'd say 2 thumbs up. I mean, for the money, I don't think you can really go wrong. Thanks a lot for watching, guys. We'll see you on the next video.